Samech Vav, Daled Kislev, page Pei Ches.
Right, so we saw, by the way, there's a famous mimer in the Baal Shem Tov that, Al-Chakonim HaKabbalah Baal Shem Tov, that he always used to go to sleep after Chatzos or after, and he said that the reason for that was because should be Avid Chatzos and Havikim Chatzos and the whole thing. So he said that all the Yidden for all the generations that have been doing Tikkun Chatzos, they've been Mavara the second half of the night. So he has to be up the whole, so he used to sleep the first half of the night. So he's got to be up the first half of the night and he goes to sleep the second half of the night. That's what he's been Mavara. He comes to be Mavara the first part of the night. About Shintin. That is Mavara. There's a Dika in HaChoshech v'chulu. It's well known of the Kabbalah that Dika Choshech Halel is talking in the first half. I beg your pardon, Misha. I really beg your pardon, Misha. Being as you are a busy chosim, that's the only possible terrorist possibly dream in our furthest imagination that would happen. But anyway, it's so the Baal Shem Tov just says that some people around here, they think that the first half of the day has already been Mavura, and they came to be Mavara the second half of the day. You know, that the sort of first half of the day, they seem to be. So I don't know if everybody will get my sarcasm anyway. So we'll leave it at that. But our bureau is not. We don't have to be about anything for the general world. We've got to keep for the individual world. Our bureau, and that means you got to be up in the morning. You got to be there. You got to take a rest in the middle of the day if you wish, and then you got to be back to the second half of the day and the first part of the Laila, and then Chab Yishlaf in the second part of the Laila. Kemavur b'divrei Baal Shem Tov. All right, now we go further. So we saw. I hope whoever, there's an old saying in English: if the cap fits, then you wear it. Whoever that was meant for, I hope that he realizes what it was meant for. Anyway, so we saw that the slabshus of the nefesh halakis in the nefesh habamis and in the guf could lead to a situation of tukfa, the gufa, chusha, the nafsha. That there could be a hiskabras of the chumlias of the guf, which would weaken the nefesh halakis. And we discussed that at some length in the previous class. How could you weaken the nefesh halakis? The nefesh halakis is halakus. She's nimshach mamish. Michelech elama elaka mimal mamish k'mavo in Tanya perek beis. So how can you weaken nefesh halakis? So we mentioned briefly that the guf and the nefesh habamis are from the level of Olam HaToihu, and therefore they've got a lot of toikef, and lacking the whole union of his colorless and reckoning with other madregas, so therefore they go all out, as it were, with a bren for their own selfish inyonim, and that can cause a weakness in the nefesh halakis, being as it is from the level of Olam HaTchilus, which is Olam HaTikun. The whole union of the nefesh halakis is that every union should have its place according to the entry of the oiris into the keglim and the interrelationship of the different koichos, and therefore a tremendously heavily barricading from the chumiyas of the guf can cause a lack of gilu in the nefesh halakis, which we call weakness. And we saw the difference between the word chumiyas and its inner meaning to the word gashmiyas. And we saw that the matzlish of his nefesh was dafke the inyan achumiyas. And therefore, nefesh alaki suffers a certain inyan till it becomes the anush hu, or anushi, as we saw in the pasuk in Yirmiyahu. It becomes weak and it's literally full of melody, unable to overcome the chumiyas, the nefesh abamiyas, and to carry out the inherent action of the nefesh alakis, which is lisboinen kideboy, to be misboinen elakus in the real and required way, veliyas biavava yira, and to bring from the genuine isboninus the awakening of the midas avava yira. And we saw that was the union of oni mitrayim, the meitzhorim, and the gvurim. Mitrayim is one from the word meitar. But meitar means a limitation and a holdback. That the Yidden, as they were in Mitzrayim, in the limitations and the holdbacks and the Hester that there was in Mitzrayim, but that causes them to be aniyim badas. What ain't on the ela badas, and we saw that das is divided literally into two inyanim of chesed and gevura. What they are the two inyanim, chesed is ahava, and yira is the inyan of gevura. And we saw that das is really one of the three moichin. It's shy to the moyach das. It's a chelik of the activity of the moyach, but it has in itself already the koyach haregish. We saw the ability to feel and be sensitive and to feel in yoni elikus, even how they are inside the moyach. And that is the beginning of vav yira. Dafkut for that then goes down vav yira into the lave and becomes a inyan of gilui hamidus. How they are in Kedusha, love of Hashem and fear. And we saw that was the koisef achuka and iskuliyul, that is the basic koisef, the longing and the desire on the part of the nefesh alakis to be dovuk in Elokus. How was it that they could be in a state where that was all, even for Oni, who was in a state of poverty? Yeah, alidei shahem b'Mitzrayim, due to the fact that they were at that time in Egypt with bechinas meita, the inyan from Mitzrayim from Rosh Meita, the meita, the guf, shemagbil malbish hanefesh miyoi. So here he calls it not the inyan from Chumis, but the meita of the guf. So we have to say that everything begins with the fact, first of all, there's a meita of the guf. And then later, the meita of the guf leads to a meita of gashmiyas, and then eventually even into chumniyas. What's the meita of the guf? Well, it's understandable that the way the nefesh alakis is lamayla in olam haselyonim prior to her coming lamata, then she's able to understand and be dovuk and appreciate Elokus in a very, very high level of oneness with Elokus mamish. When she comes down already, even in the best possible way, there's a yerida, what we call a descent of the neshama into the guf, then automatically the guf limits, being as the guf is a very limited entity and a very specific entity here, lamata v'zeh ha'olam, that already places a limitation on the av of yira, the nefesh alakis, and that's already the first main holdback or helim against the gilu of the nefesh alakis, the etcheminyan, that there's a meita of the guf. And then afterwards there can be a meita of gashmiyas, but that's the idea of the physicality, but that's already part of the guf belavochi, and then it can lead eventually to the inyan of the chumriyas we saw, but that is a helim v'hes to complete on the inyan of the koyach of the nefesh alakis to express herself and bring her inyanim of Av and Yira through his boniness into the Aveda Begila nefesh of the men. Hainu, he said, Davki alidei she'im b'Mitzrayim b'pinis meita haguf shemagbil, it limits umalbish, it causes a lavush. What the difference between lahagbil means just to limit somewhat, of lahalbish means that you place over the covering, for Russian lavush, hanefesh miyoid. But the guf causes a limitation and a heavy lavush over the nefesh, even, as we said, in the best situation. So therefore the etzem yerida of the neshama into the guf begins the whole anius, the whole poverty of the nefesh elokis, and eventually leads to the inyan of the gashmis and the chumriyas, and that's the inyan of golus mitzrayim. In other words, that the golus is that even though the nefesh elokis wants to be the way it should be, wants to express its koiches, wants to bring them out, but there's these heavy blockages and halomas vesterim which prevent it being able to bring forth its own inyanim. And that's the ikar inyan of golus, and particularly of meitzodim and gvulim, like it's brought down in many places, and so that's the amitis inyan of the golus. And so therefore, lazeh, due to the fact that the nefesh elokis can be and is in such a golus, nitno hatoiro liYisrael. It was for that, taking into account that situation in the descent of the neshama into the guf, it was because of that the Eibishter gave the inyan of Torah to Yidden, and through Yidden into the world. Sha'atoira nikra oiz, because the Torah is called power and strength. There's one on the word oiz means powerful strength. Shehi hanoisenas koyach v'oiz lanefesh elokis lizgaba al chumiyas aguf v'nefesh abahamiyas v'gasusom. Gasusom means their grobkeit. How they got their heaviness of their grobkeit. Lotzeis mi mazgeir asir, for the going, in order to bring about the going out, the exit of the prisoner from his locked up place. What an asir means, a prisoner, somebody is locked in a base asurim. Mazger means the locked door. You mean mazger, for the locked doors that keep him in. Therefore, alidei, the inyan from Torah, the nefesh elokis gains the ability to be victorious over the chumriyas and their heaviness and their grobkeit, to go out and bring the prisoner out of his locked up cell. That's what we mazgeir asir. How do we know that Torah has that ability? We say it in Kapitel Kov Tes in Tehillim. Hashem oiz li'amei yitain, Hashem yavorech etzamei ba'sholem. This is what. So therefore, first off, Hashem oiz li'amei yitain. Pirush, alidei ha'toiro shenikras oiz. Through the inyan of Torah, which we already said is a oiz, and it's called oiz. Shenosan li'amei, that he gave the Torah to Yidden. Alidei zeh hu mevorech etzam ba'sholem. Through that, he brings them to a blessing of peace. He blesses them literally with peace. So what is the word ba'sholem? So he says, beis b'china sholem. It's written in Pirusha Chassidus and Drusha Chassidus from the Rebbeim, that they touch the word ba'sholem, meaning beis sholem. Literally two pieces, two types of peace. So what are the two types of peace? Kamaima Razal was the famous statement of our sages: Sholim b'palmalia shel maila, v'sholim b'palmalia shel mato. You have to make those are two abbreviations that you have to be careful to get them clearly. But pamalia means literally the entourage, like the court, the royal court, and the pamalia shel maila in the Eibishter's court maila. And Pamalia Shel Mate literally in the entourage in the court, Alayala the Mate. So that's a famous statement of the Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin. The Gemara brings over there that Omer Rabbi Alexandre, Omer Rabbi Yeshua, I think it is over there, that Kol Ha'aloim Torah, Kol Ha'isik B'Torah Lishmo, whoever learns Torah, for the sake of Torah itself, he learns how to call Torah disinterestedly, Oisik B'Torah, Meisim Sholem, and he places peace b'pamalia shel maila u'b'pamalia shel mata. That is up to Gemara. And it brings a pasuk from Yeshaya Hanovi, Kol HaMachzik B'Ma'uzi, whoever holds onto my strength, which we've already said that means Torah, yeah, Yaseh Sholem Li, Sholem Yaseh Li. It's written in the pasuk, he will make peace for me, peace he will make for me. In other words, the pasuk chazes over that he will make peace twice, but it says it in two different expressions. Sholem Yaseh Li, he will make me Sholem, and then Yaseh Li Sholem, he will make me Sholem. Amamira, the Gemara says Rabbi Alexander over there that means that if he learns Torah Lishma, in other words, that he's Machzik B'Ma'uzi, he holds firm into my strength. So the Mashal learns over there what's it got to do with Torah Lishma, because if somebody learns Torah Shalom Lishma, then he tries to learn Torah in a way that the world won't say too much about it, won't make fun of him, or everything will be very bilabatif, you know. So that means he learns Torah, but he learns Torah the way the world would like you to learn Torah. Torah Lishma means that you're devoted to the Torah only for what Torah really is, and it's the Inyan from Kislev, Etzem Elakus Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu M'mayla Mata, to bring the world to its ultimate Shleimus V'Tachlis. So there's really not much point in doing anything else but learning Torah, particularly at certain points in your life. That means that you hold on to Torah. You don't just learn the Torah, but you grasp it firmly, and you do, and you learn Lishma. And therefore that's called Kol HaMachzik B'Ma'uzi. He holds on to my strength, then he makes Sholem for me twice. They state in the pasuk. So the Gemara teaches it that he makes Sholem B'Pamali Shel Maila, Sholem B'Pamali Shel Mata. So the great Meforshim learn over there that Sholem B'Pamali Shel Maila they teach in all sorts of ways. That Lamaila in the Bezin Shel Maila, the Eibishter wants very much that the Yidden should be praised, and he should see his people and everybody, all the Malachim and all the Mekatrigim, how they call it, Rachmanin Klan, all the the accusers and all the other Bedins and all the other things, that they should all agree that the Yidden, that there's nothing better, and give a cook the Yidden are doing, etc., etc., but not always the Eibishter manages to be as on top of all the accusers he would want, and all sorts of sometimes not good suggestions and things come up into the Bezin Shel Maila, and there's like a difference of opinion between the Eibishter and all of his Malachim and all of his Batidin v'chuloi. But somebody who learns Torah Lishma, then the Eibishter will say, oh, look at that guy, he learns, he doesn't care about anything, he's devoted and he's grasping the Torah with everything he's got, and the Torah is a source of strength for him only. Then you see, so then all the peoples, when I say peoples, I mean all the Malachim in the Bezin Shel Maila, they all have to keep quiet, how they call it. That makes peace between the Eibishter and the ones who are not so peaceful with the Eibishter, but Isha has man. But if we learn that pshat, and come to this, the greatness of the individual, that even if one person, Kol Hoizik means any guy, that he's Machzik B'Torah, that he's Shma, then he can make Sholem B'Pamali Shel Maila, that he can cause all the Malachim to be, they can't say anything, and the Eibishter gets his way, and he gives only good to Yidden. Omein Kein Yehi Lotze. And Yidden are not going for a small fry anymore. They don't want to stam good. I mean, they take stam good also. Or they want the emes good. And they want the good. How it is in the even from Gula Mitzis Vaha Ashleim, take it from me out now. If you just learn Torah Lishma, even one person. However, how Allah has become several persons. Allah has become a whole yeshiva of persons. They're learning Mamish Lishma, then the Malachim just get everything becomes Sholem B'Pamali Shel Maila, in the Bezdin Shel Maila, everything becomes Sholem, the Eibishter gets his way, as it were. I mean, some people learn that it's got to do when Moshe Rabbeinu came to get the Torah, the Malachim came along and they said, who is this? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, you guys, you Klum Mitzrayim, you relative, did you ever have really difficult times? Like my children, the Yidden have had, and so on and so forth. So the Malachim didn't get the Torah. Or if they say that the Yidden are not learning the Torah, how it should be, and they come along and they tie it again, they say, listen, when you give the Torah Lamata, maybe you should take it and give it to us, etc. Therefore they said, oh yes, there is people learning Torah, the people that learn Torah Lishma, and they learn different Pirushim in the Gemara in that statement. Pamalim Shalmata, that you make Shalom, and the Pamalim Shalmata means that you make Shalom between the world and the people who learn Torah, instead of the world being a disturbance. Then the Eibusha makes that everything in the world will assist these people and help them. So the more you learn Torah, the more the Eibusha helps you to be helped by the world and to be assisted. That the world shouldn't oppose you, but should only bring blessing and good to you. But that doesn't mean, like the Magen Avraham says, you shouldn't bring your bed into the base of Medrash. It doesn't mean if you want to chapa shlaf in base of Medrash, you can put your head on your hands and chapa shlaf. But it doesn't mean you can bring a bed into the base of Medrash. You lay yourself down on the bed and chapa shlaf when everybody else is learning Torah, or in a place where you should be learning Torah. Yeah, so it's the same thing, but again to also some macholim tovim like ice cream, nochas olchin yonim. The base of Medrash is not the place of such inyonim. Is when the Torah, when the Eibusha sees the Yidden are devoting themselves to the learning, yeah, but even koseh, the learning mamish with a koch and a bren, giving themselves over, forgetting about the inyonim of the world. So then the world makes peace with them. The world says, oh, yeah, instead of interfering and causing difficulties, all the things in the world come to help them. And that's Sholem, but Pamali Shol Mato. Those are the Sholem, but Pamali Shol Mato. That's how the big Meforshim, that's how they learn the Gemara. Comes along the Rebbe and he teaches a teach which is Mamish Lefin Yoneinu in the Gemara. And he says, so what does it mean that you make two types of Sholem, but Pamalim Shomal, Pamalim Shomata? So he said, Sholem, the word Sholem, Beklal, who beginners is Kashres. The whole meaning of Sholem is the two things that were Kilu Menagdim one to the other, they were quarreling and they were at strife one with the other, all of a sudden join up and bind together and they become like one party. That's one of the Inyanim in Sholem. So that was it. Sholem means like a binding together of two entities that were apart. So he said, Be'inyan he says, V'asholem b'pamali shamayla, he b'chinas gilui eirein seik baruchu mamish benefesh alakis, liyais kashura u'yuchedes b'chinas bitul mamish. He said, what is Pamali Shalmaila? It doesn't mean the Pamali how it is Lamaila in the Eibusha's Beis Din. No, Pamali Shalmaila means by the autumn, yeah, the autumn's got a Maila and a Mata. In the Mensch himself there is a Maila and a Mata. So what is the Maila? Nefesh Elokis, so that which is divine, yeah, the divine part of the Mensch, which is the Nefesh Elokis, and the more worldly part of the Mensch, and the more aspect of him, albeit a spiritual aspect, for the child to the world, that's the Nefesh Bahomiyah. So in the future, I have to see if we can introduce here some tissues or some things. Pass him on. It's, because I remember there was a famous chassid here. He was a very interesting person. And he used to be in the old days when the koil was over in here. He was like the mashgiach in the koil. I don't know whether the koil was mashgiach on him already, but he was a very beautiful person, an amazing person. And he was very mahadir in mitzvahs and in Yodim. And he said, I remember him saying that wherever you're learning and davening, you shouldn't have toilet paper on the table. You shouldn't use it because toilet paper really belongs somewhere else. He said when it's on the table, yeah, so I've never seen people who managed to carry out that kumrah as much as he did, but if he ever saw where people learning toilet paper, take this away, put it away somewhere, that belongs in a place where you're not allowed to be when you learn it. So the reminded me of that little portion of the history of the Koil. So now we go further, so you can draw whatever conclusions from that you wish. What it means is it would be nice if, in addition to all the good things we have here, we have a very good Gabba here that he keeps it all tidy, and he puts his energy into keeping it tidy, etc., etc. And maybe he would be so good as to get a couple of packages of tissues if we paid for them, of course, and he would have them on the tables.
He give them out, the Shabbos papers. I'm friends with the guy that will give them to me. The Shabbos, the Shabbos packages.
Shabbos packages. I don't know exactly what that is, but
Shabbos toilet paper.
That's also toilet
They're
paper.
clean, right?
These things are tissues. Them is a tissue, not toilet paper. Not Shabbos toilet paper. This Reb Baruch, he wouldn't have gone for that either. He would have said that's just another type of the same meaning. He wouldn't allow that. But you have to get them as a tissue.
Okay.
So it costs a poor grosh. A poor groshin, as they say. And we'll have them on the tables. Also pointing back to our Indian. So that's the Maila Amata by the Mensch. Nefesh Elokis is his Maila, Nefesh Abamiyos is his Mata. And Sholem means his Kashrus. He said, what does it mean that when you learn Torah Lishmo, then you cause a Sholem in your Pamalis or Maila? So he said, you cause a Gile or Ein Seif, Baruch Hu, Mamish, by Nefesh Elokis. Now, what does that mean with the word mamish? Well, the Nefesh Elokis anyway looking for Elokus. And the Nefesh Elokis is Elokus. Why don't I give her and say mamish? Well, the pshat is, like we just said, that when the Nefesh Elokis comes into the body, then that's a yerida for the Nefesh Elokis. Big yerida. Just being in a body is a limitation and a holdback for the Nefesh Elokis. Edifa, Nefesh Elokis can't, through her just being in the body, really have the kesher in her Seif that she had in the Olam Yisrael, Yoinim, prior to her Yerida into the Guf. So therefore, Sholim b'Pamal Yishal Maila means that we give back to the Nefesh Elokis, so that the Emesa Ishashrus in Elokus that she had when she was La Maila. I mean to send you the Guf is Maila Mamasti. How do you do that? So on the day what you learn Torah, and Torah is Uiz, and Torah is Gila Elokus, and you learn Lishmor that you don't reckon with other things, and you don't do things for the sake of Gashmias or you have other motivations, but you only mean the Torah. Then you get to that Indian of the Torah, Atmamish Gila Elokus, and that gives the Nefesh Elokis the ability to lift herself beyond that limitation and that, as it were, goal that she has in the Guf, and be mamish dovuk in Elokus, similar to what she was prior to her coming into the body. And like the Alter Rebbe Mavayin in the Geras HaTshuva, in chapter Ches and Tes and Yud, he's Mavayin that's the whole Inyan of Aveda is to elevate the Nefesh Elokis to the Ishkashvis in Elokus that she had prior to Yeridos Lamata. And then there's even higher Inyanim than that. Isma. That's the Gila where it ain't safe in there. So how do you do that? On the day you learn Torah Lishma. That elevates the Nefesh Elokis from her limitation and allows her to be mamish dovuk in the Eibishter, similar to what she is mitadatzmo before she comes into the body. But what does that mean? Bapuyo. It means bapuyo bebitul mamish. That she loses all sense of her own self and she becomes completely batel b'metzias, just like the spark when it goes back into the flame, then it becomes batel mamish b'metzias inside the flame. And therefore, what that means is that the Adam feels in himself, and in all of his inyonim, a new type of beetle that he senses. The whole inyan of the world is not a metzias, as we began saying earlier, and he understands how ato achaloi nivroho oilam v'ato misha nivro oilam. It's all one and the same inyan, and therefore he's mishkasha into Elokus. Even that he's mavatel, he feels the beetle of the Gufa Nefesh Abamiyot. But you might say, but the Gufa Nefesh Abamiyot are still there, so don't they get in the way? So we say that's the second Sholem. והשולם בפרמטה לשון מטה, בפרמה לשון מטה, היינו האורס כויכס הנפש אלוקיס המלובשים בגוף הנפש הבאמיות, שלא יהיה מוינע ומייחד מצד הגוף הנפש הבאמיות, רק שיהיו כולם משכימים ומשרצים לבחינס ביטול זה. So the Pama לשון מטה is that once the nefesh elokis gains that giving of power from the Torah, that she gets more independent and she's able to go back to her type of bittul, so then she sends those messages down into the guf and the nefesh abahomiyot. So you might say, well, did the guys become a tzaddik? And I say, he's working only with tzaddik nefesh elokis. So the Rebbe said, lav dafka, he's a tzaddik gomer, because after all, there's still a certain trace of the koiches of the nefesh elokis, which are mamish merubish in the guf and the nefesh abahomiyot. But what he does do is he gives them the power that they become, as it were, able to discern, to separate themselves and discern themselves from the whole back of the guf and the nefesh abahomiyot, that they become a little bit higher and independent of that, because the ha'ora from the iskashus of the etzem and nefesh elokis flows down into its portions of it which are still melubish inside the guf and nefesh abahomiyot, and that shines and has an effect in such a way that the guf and the nefesh abahomiyot back off. So by a tzaddik, he's mahapachom. He's mahapachom legamre, that they become also tachas habitul in Elokus Kumavur in Tanya, and particularly in Perikov Tes in Tanya Barichet. Yeah, but auch upon him, he can cause that the guf and nefesh abahomiyot is back off, that they're no longer omeneya omeyakim. They don't hold back anymore, and on the contrary, they're mashkim. Umisrachim, they even agree, and they're even willingly. Misrachim means they willingly agree. Yeah. Mashkim means no. They say okay. Misrachim means that they willingly agree. Lebchinas bittul said, and they say, oh, we also agree that there be such a bittul. In other words, we won't upon him disturb. So I mean that's a very high level. That's the level that we see. The Beinoni in Tanya, but he's a person that he's able to hold back, and all the Inyanim don't actually get in and never bring him to anything, which would be Hepech of mitzvahs, even in Dakish Sheba, Dakish, Amamela. He says the Rebbe, the Inyan from Torah, if it's learnt lishma, and it's learnt in the proper way, then it's a emesa koyach, it's a uiz. First of all, it gives the nefesh elokis its emesa return to its own bittul in Elokus, and that bittul gets sent down through the different levels of the slapshus of the nefesh elokis into the guf and the nefesh abahomiyot, and brings them also to at least what you might call a peaceful allowance. That the nefesh elokis take over, as it were, even if they're not completely mishapik. Let's tell you, about they become weakened, and they agree somewhat not to disturb.
The nefesh abahomiyot is going to agree because he's forced to agree.
Yeah, in this particular case, we have to say it's more because he's forced. But nonetheless, misratzim means that in the end he says hen rather than loy. So he says yes more than no. In other words, that he becomes aware of the fact that there's a tremendous inyan here in Elokus, and he realizes that Sokosof his inyan is to be batil Elokus, and therefore at least he, as it were, holds up. Now that's what we call in Chassidus the bittul of the managi. Not that you've been mavatal him in the real sense that you've turned him into something else, because that's what he was mavayan tanya in Perek, that the ultimate shleimus of the tzaddik is that he's mahapach, the whole inyan of the nefesh abahomiyot is mamish into toiv gomer. That's what they are. And the Beinoni is not like that, but the Beinoni holds them away. So what we see from that is that if a Beinoni really works hard, then he doesn't just hold them away, but to a certain extent they even agree, as it were, to keep away. And therefore, the more you go ahead with the Aveda, then the more their bittul is to be felt, and the less disturbing trouble you have from nefesh abahomiyot. So that was the Rebbe, at least that there shouldn't be a monea or miyakev. There shouldn't be any preventations mitzad the guf. Rach shiyu kulim mashkim he atoiro. I haven't. But we just said before that an nefesh habahomiyot is from olam atoyu, and therefore the nefesh habahomiyot got a very strong power that the nefesh lakish, just in its own right, finds it very hard to override. It's very hard to overcome that tremendous, like we saw before, burning, driving, almost chutzpah of the koiches of the nefesh habahomiyot. So how all of a sudden you say, oh, now everything she is on the conscious, she gets the upper hand and she goes back to her bittul in Elikus, how it was even prior to her coming down into the guf. So therefore the Rebbe said, because there's an in Torah, what we saw apart from strength, we saw that Torah is also a weakening influence. We saw that Yaged Lecha Talum is Chokma mitzad the Luchis Achroinais. We saw the pasuk Yaged Lecha Talum is Kiflaim L'Tushia. We saw the doubled Eitzer. So 1200 the word Tushia. We touched that earlier. The word Tushia has in itself two pirushim. It can mean the unif an Eitzer Toivo, Eitzer and a good assistance in the form of an Eitzer, or Tushia can mean from the word Toshash, where Toshash means to be weakened. Tushia can mean to weaken something. So therefore the Torah has got both miles. The Torah is Kiflaim L'Tushia. She has in itself Eitzer Torah, all sorts of good Eitzers, how to get higher than the Nefesh Habahomiyot. There's another mile in the Torah that she also weakens the Nefesh Habahomiyot. She herself causes a weakening in that toyu, dikatoikif, that there is in the Nefesh Habahomiyot. So therefore he says that the Torah is also called Gam Kain. The Torah is called Ois, is also called Toshia. It's called a weakening force. Shemateshes koyach hasitra acher shemitzad haguf. In other words, the Torah weakens that toyu dikabren that there is in the body. That's sort of, as we call it before, chutzpah dikatoikif that comes mitzad toyu that there is in the guf and the nefesh the guf and the nefesh habahomiyot, and the Torah has got that ability to weaken that as well. So once it does that, then it's able to cause the nefesh habahomiyot. He sees that he's facing a very powerful light that's breaking. He's how do you call it, his what you might call it, his muscle bulging type of power against. He sees that there's a power nimshut from Torah weakens that in him. Therefore he backs off. How do you call it? He withdraws and he says, okay, you run it your way, nefesh halakis. Just let me out of it a bit. And he withdraws and even agrees that the inyonim should be run according to kedusha and to the nefesh halakis. And that's what we saw earlier in the pasuk from Yoiv, that Yaged Lecha Talum is Chochma Kiflaim L'Tushia. But there's two inyanim in Tushia. One is Eitzer, and one is the inyan of the weakening and causing a breaking down of the power of the Nefesh Habahomiyot. Good. So according to that, we will now understand the difference between the Luchos HaRishaynos and the Luchos HaAchreinos. But the Indian of the Luchos HaRishaynos is Gilead, a tremendous light which was given. And we can suggest that that's the Indian of Shom Pamali Shomayla, that everything goes well and everything goes, that the Nefesh Halakis is able to get back and feel a tremendous connection to a source. Oh, but what about this Pamali Shomata? How do we get rid of this whole bilbul of the Nefesh Habahomiyot and the koyach of the Nefesh Habahomiyot, and how do we make sure that the Nefesh Habahomiyot is able to back off and not interfere anymore, etc., etc. So for that we have to have a new union in the Gilead of Torah, that there should be more emphasis, as it were, on that aspect of Torah, on the going down into all the details of the physical world and the Nefesh Habahomiyot, and bringing them to a point where they would at least not interfere, and even to a point of agreeing. Or for that you need a lot of Torah. So you might say, well, who needs it? So that's what we saw, that the Luchas Rishonos, they were a very high Gilui, but they were for people who Poskazohu, Moson, that they'd lost all the main Indian of the necessity of fighting with the undesirable aspects of this world. Overly, what we saw that the Feta Ego and the Yida which occurred brought back the whole Indian of the impurity of the world into the Nishomas and into the Avodah of Yidden. Yeah, therefore they needed a new Gilui in Torah Gufa, a new Indian in Torah which would give them the power to be able to deal with all that mixture of bad and and the mixture of bad in the Guf and in the Nefesh Bahamias and in the Matthias of the world, which came about through the returning of the Yerida after the Indian Chet HaEgo and the other Chatorim which followed it. That's that Indian of Torah how it's Tushia. In other words, the Torah how it's Kuya Mitzad the Etzim Gila Velakus to the Nefesh Lakish. That might have been enough to Luchas Harishoinoi. But the Indian of being able to go down into the world and use Torah to break the power of the Sitra Achra and gradually bring the Sitra Achra at least to be Nefach, in as much as it doesn't interfere anymore and allows how they call it, the Nefesh Lakish and Kedusha to bring forth their merchandise and they say in Yiddish Durchschmuggeln, to smuggle through the blockade the whole Indian and bring it into Gilui. Well, that's all you did, the Indian of the Luchas Achroino. He stopped here, the second Indian in the Luchas, where they became an Indian for many peoples in Torah. Gadatis, Halachas, and all those Inyanim which are needed for the Bira of the Eilam Mami. And that's the difference between the Luchas Harishonos and the Luchas Achroino. So, Shaila is, what are we doing with in this class? We see that certain people are holding by the whether they're holding by the Luchas Achronos, but what are they holding? We see a lot of drooping and long faces, etc., that we can only assume that it's due to the fact that the Yom HaRavi, the Shabbos, approaching Yom HaChamishi, it's already early Yom HaChamishi, so people have been busy with Avodas Havaya so much in Limud HaTorah and Beikis, Hatfila and all sorts of Givaldik Inyanim. Comes this time of the week, they're already getting a little weary. It's at the Tushia, it's already weakening the Nefesh Habayis. The Nefesh Habayis says, listen, after all, I'm in charge of the Guf a bit. You guys want weakness, so you got it, And Bamela people are sort of drooping a bit, and there's a little bit of Tushia, Mitzad the Guf in the Nefesh Bahamias. Is a mother that's lacking a bit of the Simcha and a bit of the other Inyanim what they're supposed to be, B'shas Limudah Torah, slightly long phases, but not as of Inyanim. Is what we have to nonetheless be determined that we're going to go ahead and we're going to be mamshich or the Inyanim alaf, the problems of the Marish Chlera. It comes mitzad these gabras of the Guf and the Nefesh Bahamios. But nobody knows quite what Mashchora means, probably. They do. You don't know what a Mashchora is? You never heard the expression Mashchora before? Come on. Mashchora means like, like depression,
Apathy.
Apathy, yeah, but not just apathy. How do you call it? Negative apathy, like depression. That's the idea for Morish Chora. Morish, in Yiddish it's called Morish Chora. But in Lashon Kodesh, Marash Chora. Meaning literally black bile. And you don't know where that comes from. The famous Rambam. You guys are not Maimonides society guys, I can see. There's a famous Rambam in the Shmone Prochim, the Rambam, that's his beer, V'derech Hakdama to his Pirush, Pirchei Ovid. Rambam wrote a special beer, like a big Hakdama to Pirchei Ovid. He called it the Shmone Prochim, the 8 chapters. And over there he writes that the mensch is governed mainly by his, the bile that goes off from his liver. And that led to a whole thing in medicine, that even to the state of certain peoples, They call themselves Maimonides, these societies, and they hold that the Rambam is right, that the majority of illnesses in the body come from improper products from the bile of the liver. And that's called mara. The juices given off by the liver are called in the old Hebrew mara. And therefore, there was a little, what's it called?
The gallbladder.
The gallbladder. A little thing called the gallbladder, that's called the kish hamara. That's called literally the pocket, where the mara gathers inside. Is a matter, the Rambam says you can have black bile going off from your liver, you can have red bile, you can have white bile, and you can have like combinations of them. You're not familiar with the whole India. So I said, when you got bile going that's coloured more towards black, then you're sort of having, you can't really find any reason to be with simcha anyway. The Alter Rebbe brings it, no? The Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, in Perek Yud, Perek Tes. The Alter Rebbe brings Alidei Aish Gabrus Hamor Shchoy. No, not in Perek Tes, in Tes Vav. He brings that it can be a Beinoni. That he never does any affairs, and he's never bothered much by the Eitzahara. It's at his Gabrus Hamarish Choira. Look up, you'll see that. Because he's got a lot of black bile, and he tends to be a bit of a sort of a cold person. He's not particularly heated by anything much. Therefore, he doesn't even get tempted by his Nefesh HaBahom. Look it up over there, Tanya. You'll see Alidei Gabrus Hamarish Choira. That's from the Rambam. That's the whole Indian that you've got black bile. And then if you have red bile, then you tend to be too that you're sort of a slugger or a clapper, and you're always angry, and you're always being offended, and you're always taking offense and traying up people. Not at all. That's the Rambam said. That's mora, how do you call it? Aduma. That's red bile, and then white bile is you're too happy. Oh yes, everything is good. You're so happy that you can fall into what he calls out there hoilulas. Sort of improper, happiness. What he call it? Sort of fun. What do you call it?
Frivolity. Frivolity.
Yeah.
Frivolity.
Yeah, frivolity. That's the word. Frivolity. You fall into frivolity, and these sort of inyanim. And so the right thing is a combination of all of them a little bit. You got to have a little bit of Mara Shkoda, you got to have a little bit of Mara Adum, you got to be able to know. You can't just be a Shmata. And then you got to have a Hini for Mara Levena, you got to be happy, you got to be Besimcha, Metalsting. They all have to sort of interrelate in the right way, as is of the Rambam. There's a lot of doctors to this day, what they hold that the Ikya health of the mensch is totally in what his liver produces, particularly this juice that goes off through the Kislev Mara, or if you don't have a Kislev Mara, you can still have the juices, and they're called Mora. And they're different colors and different inyonim. So if you ever heard the expression, and when you read in Tanya now, Perek Tes Vav, you know what you're reading. In Yiddish it's called Marsh Cheder. Marsh Cheder means the person who, and it's based on the original quote from the Rambam in the Shemona HaProchim Pirushe Shel Rambam L'Pirkei Avos. So anyway, that was like a Musa Drosha in the middle. I don't know how we got onto all that, but anyway, that happens to be the case. Whatever it may happen to do with this, I'm not sure. But there we go. Oh yeah. There has to be a limud b'simcha, you guys. What's it? Everybody's sort of sitting around. There has to be with bread and with simcha, with all steam.
White bile.
So everybody says, "Oh, yours," but we get up so early and we work so hard. And we don't never get any chance to do it. And Hashem, you have a good life.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So,
Right
at least we should get an omein out of you guys. So, the LP said, according to this, Yuvan, a fresh bein luchas arishene, shekoidem cheta ego, or bein luchas or achrene sheecha cheta ego. So I don't say, this is a difference, but, I don't really have any clear right now for the difference. Oh, yes, you do. And it's very important. Ki haluchas harishaines. He said because the luchas harishaines hoyu al der klole hatoiro. They were like general inyonim in Torah. They were like, we say, a Torah, klolos nitno, or a Torah ala klal tedaber. The Lashon in the Gemara. The Torah should be ksav. Written Torah talks in general rule. And therefore, we know that all sorts of detailed halachas come out of small passages in the Torah because it talks in a general way. Klole HaTorah, v'zehu shehoyo behem asher sadibris levod. It therefore would have been enough, in the infant, the luchis, only the asher hadibris, which are 10 things. And as we say, that hundreds and hundreds of other inyonim are hidden inside those 10 things. Over the way they are, was only 10 inyonim. Asher hadibris. Oi chamisha chumshei Torah. According to another opinion, there would have been together with them the 5 chumsheim, the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu. But whatever way we look at it, the Hainu Torah should be ksav livod. That means it would have only been the written Torah on its own. Shazel Torah k'moshe hu b'pchinas kloliyos adayin. That's the union of Torah. How it is in a form of generality as of yet. Meaning not having gone down into detail. Now what we know, as the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, that from one, in Geras HaKodesh, the Alter Rebbe's Barichas are from one word, or from one in, we learn out many halachas, because the Torah says everything only in a general way. Like he brings over the Beit Tefillin, and it's written, what does that mean? How many teitos? What is teitos? What is this? What is that? How do you tie them on yourself? All sorts of inyonim and details which are hidden inside that general statement. And I say this, afilu in the inyonim which are just purely Musa and Ruchni's inyonim, not direct mitzvahs, everything in a general way in the Torah. And the Asheros HaDibris b'miyuchad. So there was a Rebbe that chose general rules to eraisa michochma nafkes. That's one of the Zohar Kodesh says that the Torah on its way down was misgala into the Olamus through the sphere of Chochma. Eraisa michochma nafkas. It went out and came out and was revealed through the union of Chochma. The Chochma hi bechinas klal. As we know, the Chochma is one nakud, it's one essential point, and then later the point is developed in Bina and in Das and all sorts of other inyonim b'ribui ha-protim. But purely mitzad eraisa michochma nafkes, then it's in an even from klal. And that was the union of Torah, how it was mitzad luchas hareh, showing that there was no more intention on the part of the Eibishter to give anything more than the Aseres HaDibros, maximum chumshei Torah, and like the Gemara says, to get a Sefer Yoshua in addition, because that would tell us how the tribes got all the different places in Eretz Yisrael. But since the whole Zumosam, the whole in cleanliness and impurity inside Yidden that came inside the sin and hate had already been cleansed by them coming to Matan Torah, then as long as that would have remained, then you wouldn't have needed any more, because it would have been enough. On the high Madrega, they didn't want to be like they were prior to the hate. They would understand all the necessity and all the inyonim in the Torah. Just Patera Klau would be enough to assist them to, maybe it would be Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, in Geras HaKodesh, chapter 26, that when Mashiach will come, then we will know a lot of the details of the Torah just by Yediyah Tchila, because since we know some of the basic inyonim, automatically the Eibusha will reveal to us all the other inyonim. So they would have known the generalities of the Torah. It would have been known to them, the details and whatever they needed to do to bring out those details, but only for the sake of what the world would need. In such a high madrega, that's all it would have been necessary. However, he said in the Luchas Achreinos, Omnam Beluchas Achreinos, Yesh Medrash, Halachis Vagadet. So he said there's first of all inyanim from Medrash, but that doesn't necessarily mean only the Medrash Rabbah and the Medrashim. It means also Gemara, how the Gemara dashes Medrash, and Drosha, how we dashen out all the Pesukim, and halachas, all the different piskei halachas in the Gemara, particularly in the Talmud Bavli. Viagadatis means the moral and the homiletic parts of the Gemara. He said Pirush halachas, what that's the Ikar, he ko halacha bedikduk, in very great precision, v'shiur, and with all sorts of detailed limitations. V'zehu prote ha'torah, that's the details of the Torah. Shenifrat kol inyan b'derech prat. Every detail and every inyan in the Torah divides itself into all sorts of pratim. In other words, like we saw that if it's written of then the Torah itself goes in to explain to you what are the Torahs, how are they, how big are they supposed to be, under what circumstances, what goes into them, and what are the parashiyas. But ganzen arichas in the Gemara Masechta Menachos, ganzen prakim, when they talk about the inyan of the prati dinim of the infilin, v'chule. Yeah, we had only the Chamishi Chumshei Torah, however, much of that we would have needed to know. We would have known it Malachatchila. But the fact that there was a yerida into the whole the necessity to purify the world bit by bit after the whole yerida in the Chet Ha'egel, v'chule. So then we have to know everything in Torah. Torah has to show us every inner how it is right? So that when we go into the details, we're learning details in Torah, and that's coming down in a way that it enters the guf and the nefesh habahamiyas, because it's divided into a ribui detail. And here we see that the only way to really be mavara anything and purify anything, including the guf and the nefesh habahamiyas, is only when you deal with them in detail, when you get into inyanim and you bring nocha aprata, nocha inyan, then you're able to gradually, massively alter them and change them and make them better. But if you just deal with klolas, and you say, oh, this is a general inyan, then the guf and nefesh habahamis are not impressed. They just say, oh, and then they waltz further the same way they were before. And that we find Benegir to another inyan, and that's the inyan of his bonan, as we mentioned earlier, that the inyan of the nefesh halakis is to be misboina in elakus. Then you have to be misboina also in a way of detail. If you're misboina just beklal, then in kuntus tefillah and in kuntus aveda, the Rebbe Nishmasi Eiden is mavaya barichas, that doesn't help you. You really just stay the same as you were, and you say, oh yes, I know this, I know that. Everything, I mean, yeah, tansel mit der Gattel, this little dance, wave your gattel, and you go further. That's not the way it should be. You have to go down into details and then further details, and those details, that's what eventually comes down and affects the inyan of the nefesh habahamis, because he knows that you know exactly what you're dealing with, and you literally you bombard him and fence him around with all the different details. And the same thing in Torah. Had Torah been from Kloli, then it would have needed a much higher person to make use of it. But now that we got down into a necessity to purify our nefesh habahamis, because he's become a very powerful influence, like we pointed out before, mitzad the nefilas and the tzutzes v'chulei, then you need to deal in dafki in a precise and detailed way, and you have to know every inyan that you do. You have to be aware of it, al pi Torah, and that affects the person and gets into the details of his body and his nefesh habahamis. In other words, that you know that there's almost no detail of your personal life that's not affected by some halacha b'Torah, and that the Shulchan Aruch is a big sefer. It's not a small general sefer with a few general rules, but it's a very detailed sefer. Kiyadua le'yedei chein. It's well known to those who learn the Shulchan Aruch, particularly when you get into the Shulchan Aruch Yorateya and Ibn Ezra, Ibn Ezra, and Choshen Mishpat Bavada. So the said the Rebbe, that was the Mila of the Luchis Achreinos, because they came to a world which had become confused and had fallen into a matter where everything is under the confused ruling of the Guf and the Nefja. And you got to learn, turn away the talks in details to the detailed necessities of the massivity of the fall and the collapse. Yeah, what that is literally every detail in life and every detail in the world. I said the Rebbe Torah was nifrat kol inyan b'derech prat. V'yadua, said the Rebbe, sha'aprotim nimshchu mibchinas moiches timoa davka lamayla mibchinas klolei haTorah shemibchinas chochma v'hu b'chinas kav hamido butzina de kardonisa hu b'chinas gevuris da'atik yemen shemelubish b'moiches timoa shemoideit kol hamadidos שתהיה עסוקה זין תפוחים ומשהו הוא דווקא הוא כהי גבנס זין תפוחים ומשהו. Here we meet over the whole Kabbalah sentence here. So first of all he mentions that the protim are nimshach from moiches timua. That abbreviation is the two words moiches timua. But he said that's l'mayla mibchinas klolei haTorah shemibchinas hachochma. So now moiches timua is called in other places, and we're still going to meet up with it again a little bit, few lines further, and it's going to be called chochmas timua. So it's well known that moiches timua and chochmas timua really are two expressions for the same meaning. Now moiches timua is more the lashon how it occurs in certain of the great Kubbalim, and Nirim is also in the Zohar Kodesh. Chochmas timua is more like the lashon how it is according to Chassidus, and to the works of the great Latin Kubbalim. So, what is the inyan of moiches timua? It's well known that Lamayla Me'atzilus is another oilam called Arich. We have what's called Arich Anpin, which are the long faces. That's to say that we have the sphere of Keser, or what you might call the Klolis HaBechina of Keser, but that's Lamayla Me'olam HaAtzilus. It's literally the Ein Seif Lamayla Me'olam HaAtzilus. But in that Gufa we have two inyanim in that Keser, the crown, which is the oil Shalamayla, and Makif to Atzilus, because it's very Ein Seif and very far-reaching in its whole Gilui. In that Gufa we have two madregas, Atik ve'Arik. And the inyan for Atik is like an etzem dikazach, it's like an akuda police pashta, because it's the etzem of the Ein Seif himself. That's what we call Bechina Taktoyin Sheba Atzil. Ve'ilu the inyan for Arik, the Chitzonius, so-called, of Keser, well, that's how all the spheres are found in a way that they're clearly, they're like preparing to be revealed into Olam HaAtzilus, but they haven't yet come b'tzimtzum, kol HaTorah, in order to reveal themselves. And therefore they're in a state of where Klolius are dying, legabi the inyan of the spheres how they are in Atzilus. But they're very high madrega, and each sphere has in itself a very high and intense level of what it's all about, prior to its kilo in Olam HaAtzilus. So just like you got all the 10 spheres in Arich Anpin, in Arich, you've also got Chochma in Arich. Chochma is the first beginning of Arich. It's the first sphere in Arich. That's called Chochmas Timua. In other words, Chochma how it is in Keser. Chochmas Timua. And that's called in Kabbalah Moiches Timua. Literally the hidden inyan of the Moichin, how they are in Arich. Now, as always, Chochma is a very first beginning. Therefore, Chochma is a kli and a beetle to things which are higher. And therefore, we say that inyan of Atik, the inyan of the Eibishter Mamishah is too high in Pnimis HaKeser to be revealed, or that's able to enter in a way the inyan for Moiches Timua. And the inyan of Chochma, how he is in Keser, is a kli Masuyam to that inyan of the inyan from Atik. How he is Pnimis HaKeser. because he's the Chokhmah of our in. Chokhmah is always a kli to the Ein Sof Shalamayla me Hasfira. Like we say, the Chokhmah is koyach ma, it's a koyach of emes bittul, and therefore it's mekabel from higher always. A Chokhmah me'ayin kimotei. This is one on the famous posik. The Chokhmah comes from ayin. Its whole in is ayin. So therefore, Chokhmah stimoa or moicha stimoa, said the Rebbe, they are exactly the opposite to Chokhmah. How it is in Atzil, the opposite. They're mokir, but they have in themselves the inyan from moicha stimoa, Chokhmah stimoa. They have in themselves a inyan which is literally higher and more intense than Chokhmah, which derives from the chitzonius of Chokhmah stimoa into Olam HaTzilas, and it's Chokhmah and Olam HaTzilas. What is the Maila? He said the way it comes through a certain Amshocha chitzonius from Moicha stimoa into Chokhmah in Atzilas, you've already got an inyan from Klolias, as we know that the Nakuda of Chokhmah is a cloud, and then later we divide it into detail. He said the tremendous Maila at that Nakuda, how it is in Chokhmah stimoa, how it is in Chokhmah da Arich, is that it's not just a inyan from Klolias, but all the details in the form of a Nakuda. In other words, it's a Nakuda. All the details are really found there. And it has the ability to give forth the details from itself, because there's a gila of the Achmiyas of the Eibishter, so that Moichas Timor is like two opposites in one noise. It's like a omnipotent thing that on the one hand it's a Nakuda, as it were. On the other hand, it's got more begolui and more in a active way all the details of all the proti Torah which are going to come out in all the Medrashim and all the Agaritis and all the Inonim, the whole sting is all there in Moicha Stimoa, even despite the fact that it's a Nakuda, it's begolui there. In other words, all those details are really there and ready. And how can that be? That's mitzat the inyan of the Gila Atzmus, he's koilel all the different, how do you call it, the Atzmus is koilel in himself all the different, what you might call, opposite nuances, and they're all one in him. Therefore says the Rebbe, well, that's the inyan of Kav Hamida, or that inyan from the Proti HaTorah, how they're called in Moichas Timoa, he says, they are the inyan of Kav Hamida Butzina de Kardunisa, who pins Gevura de Atik Yemin, Shemelubish B'Moichas Timoa, Shemoided Kolamadid. Now, what's this inyan of Kav Hamidor? So Kav Hamidor means that after the Tzimtzum Arishan, the Eibusha gave forth a kav, and that kav is like a line. It's like the Elikus now been limited into a fixed, as it were, line on a fixed avenue, and that kav is called Kav Amidor because through the kav reveals itself all the limitations and all the details which we want to express. In other words, at Lamaila Mia kav, it's all just generality. But in the kav is already the gila of the details, and therefore it's brought down that a line is made up of thousands of little dots, all one following the other. That's what a line is. So inside the kav there's already like myriads of small points that they make up the generality, or they build together the generality at a kav. And therefore the kav is called Butzina Kardunisa. Now, the word Butzina in the Lashon of the Zohar Kodesh is called light. Butzina means a light. Therefore, they refer later to Chokhmah Hazeh called Rashbi, they call Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, Butzina Kadisha, they call him the holy light. In other words, Butzina means a light. It can also mean another word, another Indian Lashon Kodesh, but we won't get involved in that. Also, Ponim, Butzina Kardunisa means hard, or how do you call it, hard, small pieces. There's a Gemara in Masechta Psochim, the Gemara in Masechta Psochim, which says that dried up how do you call it, pieces of wheat are called Chitei de Kardunisa. pieces of wheat that are gone hard, like grains of wheat that are gone a bit hard, they're called in the Gemara chitei de kardonisa. They're called hard, they're called sharp and hard pieces of grain, or pieces of wheat. So shalom whether mamish chomet or chomet mit der rabbanon, they're called chitei de kardonisa. So butzina de kardonisa, the two opposites. The word butzina means light, and gilui alakus, mamish, gilui of the Eibishter. Kardonisa means detail, little, really sort of sharp and broken details. So he said that's what the kav is. On the one hand, the kav is light, that's gilui alakus, it's mamish, gilui alakus from the Eibishter, how he was prior to the Tzimtzum. Now he's coming to such a way that he's coming now, that even though he's really the oil that there was before the Tzimtzum, but he's coming in a way that he's divided now into a ribui details. But where are those ribui details? They come from the shleimus of the omnipotence of the Atzmos. In other words, that they don't come from the fact that something has been forced into the oil and therefore has no brayer to be limited into a detail, nor the shleimus of that oil, which is the oil Atzmi, or that carries in itself the union of the details mitzad the shleimus of the Atzmos. In other words, the cow is like a combination. On the one hand, of the gilui of the Ein Sof for the Eibishter, with the gilui of detail and limitation that he has also mitzad his Atzmos. And that's the inyan we saw Moiches Timor. In Moiches Timor is miskala, those two inyan. On the one hand, it's an akuda atzmiyah, and yet on the other hand, it's gilui ha'etzem. It's got all this inyan of the details mitzad the shleimus of the mitzad the shleimus of Ein Sof, and the kav is miskala through that inyan of the Moiches Timor comes the kav, and therefore he's called butzina de kardonisa, who begins gevules. That's the inyan from Gevura, but the Gevura is the Atik Yoimin Shemelubish B'Moiches Timor. In other words, that's Gevura is the Atik Yoimin means the Eibishter, how he is, Mitzad Atik, how he is, Mamish B'china Tamtlina Shebamatzio, or the Eibishter in his shleimus, he also has Gevura. Picked as if he's got Kilo, he's also got Gevura. So the inyan of the butzina, the kardonisa, or that's the Gevuras, the ability of the Atzmos also to reveal detail and Gevura. And so that's the inyan of Gevura is the Atik Yoimin, because that's also like a contradiction. Atik Yoimin means the Eibishter. Mamish. Netal v'nivdal, the Eibishter can always be etzem, unless you say Gevura is the Atik Yoimin. In other words, the ability of the Eibishter to make a limited prat. Where does that reveal itself? In the inyan of Moiches Timor Chochma, how it is in Arif. Shemoided kol amadidas, or from there come all the details. In other words, we've dafki gone higher, we've gone into Atzmos, and dafki there we find all the details. In other words, that all the details come from a higher koyach in Gilui Alakus. They come from a Gilui Hashem's omnipotence. Once you get into Chochma and Atzilas, then you've got a very high level, but it's only more in from Gilui. Yeah, in a general way, it's more Gilui per se. But the way it is in Chochma, how it is in Arich Ampin, that's a Gilui, the etzem omnipotence of Hashem, Eikshu, Mitzad Atzmei, and therefore he's coiled both in Yonim, and both Hofchim, as it were, B'yachid, Gvura is Te'atik. Beide in Yonim together. And he said, Dafke from there, Moided Amadidas, Shetia Sukkah Zayin Tfochim Umashuhu. Now why does he write Umashuhu? Because if you got a sukkah which is Mami Zayin Tfochim, it could be it's not big enough. Because it could be that you may be missing a little something, a split fraction, and then your sukkah will be possible. Because if any less than Zayin Tfochim is already possible. So therefore it has to be Zayin Tfochim Umashuhu. Yeah, in other words, it's going to be Zayin Tfochim al Zayin Tfochim L'chol HaPochim. In its area, like it could, the area of the sukkah is going to be Zayin Tfochim or Zayin Tfochim.
What does Mashu mean?
Mashu means something.
And a little.
A little something. Dafke, Ukahai Gavna, and things like that. Yeah, it's got to be a square area of Zayin. It has to have it doesn't have to be square. It can be maybe not square, but it has to have that area. L'chol HaPochim. Okay, Governor. I'm a Kislev, the good Titera, Dibo Amasko, Bishashi, Dimo. But that's one of the famous Maimorim of Shwez over there in the Kutitera. What we'll see about that what's written there, and good today, we'll deal with it in the coming Shir Beis Hashem. Zeu Taluma is Chochma. Well, that's what we saw before, with Luchas Achreinis, David said, I'm going to tell you, hidden Chochma. It is Uimek HaChochma. Yeah, the profundity of Chochma, the emes of Uimek that there is in Chochma, de Moiches Timur, well, that's Davki in the Inifan, Moiches Timur. Davki in that Inifan, Chochma Sheba, Aricha, that's where we find the combination of Atzmis and detail. What do we see from that? That we see in order to get to all these details, which are going to, fight the details of the Nefesh HaBamis and the Yerida that there was in the world through the Chet HaEgel, all the other Chatorim, etc., then you have to draw from a much higher level in Torah. That you got to draw from the Pnimis Inyonim in Torah, which is Moiches Timur, the Koyach of Levare. In other words, if you learn Torah pure out, mitzad Giluat Torah, with that Chokmah, so it's also Torah. But it's more in a klolistic way. Of the ability to go into all the details of Mamish Bimavara Lord, and you have to learn Chokmah and even from Moiches Timur, Shabbatik, Yoimin, and how you're going to reveal that in your Torah. How are you going to know which way you're learning? Through the fact that you learn Pnimis Torah, that's Mamish Moiches Timur, Kamoshi is Boer, Lakaman, as it will be explained as we go on. And Hashem should help, but that's Indian from Pnimis HaTorah, and that's Indian from Samech Vav, etc. etc. Well, I once heard a very famous, how do you call it, Shochin, my building, he was literacy, he wasn't shy to sit him, but he was a very wonderful person, a very learned man, a very tremendously good man, very amazing man he was. And he came once to a Shabbat I made for my Adim, by my twin daughter, by Chana. And so he sat over like something similar from this Samech Vav. He spoke over about the Koyach Levara, that comes out from very high, my Stimoy. So without realizing, he took a little shot at the Mishnah. He didn't really mean anything bad. That's why some of these Chabad guys talk. They like taking a little. He took a little shot at Mishnah. He said, "This man was saying, he was a very good friend of mine. We had excellent terms, and he was, he was a Mishnah. So he was a little sort of hurt by this remark. What's that? Whatever." So I said, listen, the only way you can possibly understand what he meant is you've got to look at my man in Samech Vav. What is Samech Vav? So I told him a little about Samech Vav. I said, look, I'd really like to see that. Could I look at it? So I put a mocking to this mimer, particularly these pages we're learning now. I put a sort of thing inside, and I gave it to him. He held it for about a week. And he gave it back to him, and he said, now I forgive you, Adim. He said, I forgive you, son-in-law. He said, this is really great. He said, I must say, I'm not sure if I understood it. But he said, I can see that this Rebbe, he knew what he was talking about. He said, you can see this is really real stuff. So that's what a very well-meaning and honest Litvak, that's what he said about a very learned person. In Nigla, that's what he said about this. And he forgave Chabadnik who'd taken a bit of a shot.